Maxim Lott was just on a couple of days ago. He created a tax plan calculator online, taxplancalculator.com. Maxim, thank you very much for coming back on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Maxim, Mark Thiessen, who is a conservative commentator, and I like him a great deal, said this about the middle class and the impact on the middle class about this tax bill. Listen to this.
Well, I'm actually supportive of the tax plan overall, but the problem with it is that a lot of people in the middle class are not going to get a tax cut. About 1 in 4 Americans are not going to get a tax cut, and about 14% of middle class voters, middle class Americans, are going to see their taxes increase. That shouldn't happen under a Republican tax plan. And we're right now, the bill is kind of in a mess.
And Maxim, it seemed to me that you said the middle class was going to get a tax increase. Can you comment on what Thiessen said? 14% of the middle class will get a tax increase?
Yeah, I mean, he's right about the numbers. The one thing we have to consider the flip side of it, too. If 14% of the middle class is getting a tax increase, that means about 86% of the middle class is getting a decrease. So, on the whole, most people are getting a cut. And there's a lot of confusion in the media, I think. And I created taxplancalculator.com to help kind of cut through that. And anyone can go there and see, for me specifically, what's going to happen to my taxes.
Maxim, give me a profile of one of the 14% who will see an increase. One of the 14% in the middle class will see an increase. What's that person's profile?
So it's someone who's, say, making $200,000 in California or New York, so they're paying a lot of state and local taxes. Those are no longer going to be deductible, so they're going to pay more. And they maybe have a house, and they're paying a lot of property taxes, and they're also deducting home mortgage interest, and so they can't switch to the standard deduction. So their rates likely would be going up, for example. And maybe, less, it doesn't have to be 200,000 people, less than that could be hit too. Basically, if you take a lot of deductions, you might be in that 14%. If you take no deductions, you're definitely getting a cut, almost certainly.
Maxim Lott is my guest. He is the executive producer for Stossel Productions, also a senior producer for Reason Magazine, writes for FoxNews.com. He created ElectionBettingOdds.com and has created this one called TaxPlanCalculator.com. Maxim, the Republicans couldn't figure out a way to make sure nobody in the middle class paid any more money?
That's right. And, I think there are two reasons. And one is there's $20 trillion in debt, and there are a bunch of senators that won't vote for anything, Republican senators, anything that would increase the debt too much. That limits the cuts they can make. And the other issue is they want to simplify the code, and to do that, you have to get rid of some of these deductions. And because of that, if people who are getting a lot of those deductions, their taxes, it's hard to not make them go up. You'd have to cut rates a lot to make up for that.
Are you as concerned about the debt and the deficit to the point where you're okay with an increase in 14% of people paying additional taxes in the middle class?
I think they could make this cut bigger. You have Rand Paul saying he wanted to, they project this will raise it by a trillion or so over the next 10 years. He wanted to make it 3 times that. So there are a lot of people who would rather have this be a bigger cut. I'm sure Trump would want it to be bigger as well. But, they only have 52 Republicans in the Senate, and a couple senators there who are very concerned about the debt will make it so they can't get as big of a tax cut as everyone would like.
Maxim Lott is my guest. He created the tax plan calculator, taxplancalculator.com. Maxim, they were talking about a trigger so that in the event that tax revenues didn't come up to what they thought, they would automatically trigger tax increases. Why can't they come up with a trigger to impose some spending decreases in the event that the tax revenues aren't what they thought?
That's a very good question. And I do know some senators had said, hey, some senators did propose that. Obviously, they ended up going with neither because I believe the Senate parliamentarian ruled you can't put that in the bill and pass it with 50 votes. But that is a good point.
Maxim, Donald Trump just said he can't see any reason why we can't go to 4% GDP growth, 5% GDP growth, or even 6% GDP growth. What do you envision?
I think it could go up. I mean, already this year we've had GDP growth is 1% higher than last year under Obama, and 1% doesn't sound like much, but actually 1% GDP, that's 1% of the entire economy in growth. So it's already up a lot this year, and given the way the stock market is going, could be up even more next year.
And what's your analysis, Maxim Lott, about why it's up so high?
I think businesses and investors are very much looking forward to the tax cuts, which lower the corporate rate a lot. I think they're happy with some of the regulations that are being repealed, which is, I believe, more than 800 regulations have been repealed this year. So I think those are two big reasons.
What down the road do you think the Republican Party is going to do, if anything, about the debt?
That's a good question. I think they're going to try to keep spending from rising too much, especially people like Paul Ryan who care a lot about the debt. And so I think they'll keep the spending in check and hope that economic growth kind of makes up for the rest, and that we start running surpluses and getting back on track.
Maxim Lott, is it your feeling that when we conservatives talk a lot about what Ronald Reagan did, that dramatic tax increase, lowering the marginal rate, the income tax rate from 70% to 50%, and lowering the lowest marginal rate to 28%, that cannot be done because our debt is now too high? Is that your feeling?
I think that is a big part of it. The other thing is maybe it's a little easier to cut rates from 70% down to 50% then.
Maxim Lott, thank you very much for coming on. TaxPlanCalculator.com, TaxPlanCalculator.com. I'm Larry Elder.
Throughout the holidays, Larry is ringing the bell for the Salvation Army. Consider a gift to this remarkable organization that does the most good. Go to LarryElder.com and click the online red kettle banner,